Darkcast Network, indie pods with a dark side.
So Jennifer Aniston messaged me last night and then again this morning. Catfishing the Catfish, Jennifer Aniston number 2.
My girlfriend Leanna needs to use her neighbor's Cash App, Shauna. Catfishing the Catfish with Leanna, number 11. This is Princess, and she is going to bless me with $2.5 million. Catfishing the Catfish, Princess number 2.
So I'm getting a check for almost $10,000. Jennifer Hovarth, number 13.
Hello and welcome back to Fuck That. This week I am joined by a famous TikToker who gained notoriety for scamming scammers. Romance scams are on the rise. Romance scammers create deceptive profiles on dating platforms and across social media channels, including Instagram and Facebook. They initiate relationships to gain your trust, often communicating multiple times a day. Subsequently, they concoct a tale and end up requesting some financial assistance from you, mainly in the form of gift cards. According to the Fair Trade Commission, in 2021, there was a record high of $547 million reported as losses due to romance scams. And this is an 80% increase from 2020. And during this period, victims more frequently used gift cards to make payments to these scammers, which is more than any other payment method. But reports from 2021 also highlighted that payments made in crypto resulted in the highest financial damages. When you're thinking about famous people that scam scammers, you might be thinking of somebody like Pierogi or Jim Browning. I think it's safe to say that most, if not all of these big names come from the industry. They have a tech background. But what if I told you that there was somebody out there that did it all on his own, without a tech background? Enter Chad Huber, a 44-year-old mailman from Chicago who started fighting back against scammers from the comfort of his own home, or sometimes his mail truck during break. This week, I spoke with Chad, a TikToker known for his viral series Catfishing the Catfish. In this series, he turns the tables on romance scammers in a daring game of digital cat and mouse. Through his clever tactics and humorous approach, he not only exposes scammers, but Chad also provides valuable insights into their deceptive practices, as well as education for the general public on how to protect themselves from scammers. Chad, thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Can you tell me a bit about yourself?
Sure. I am. This feels like exactly the conversations I have with these scammers. How old are you? Where are you from? What is your job? I'm 44. I'm a mailman, and I have 3 children, 13, 11, and just turned 10. And then I do the whole messing with scammers, catfishing the catfish on TikTok.
How did Catfishing the Catfish start?
Absolute accident, really. It was, so I'm divorced, and I just started the whole mailman thing like 6 years ago. And it kind of, like, as far as vacation goes and planning that, and I don't get, holidays necessarily off. I got to be around most of the time. And it was a Christmas, and I was here home, and my kids went with their mom out of town, and I was here all by myself for Christmas. And I just started messing with one of these scammers. And I've done it before, and they usually don't go very, very far. So I deleted it after that evening, like out of the chat, because I didn't need to have that in there. And I was surprised the next day when she came back talking to me more. And then the conversation just continued to go and go. And I would send screenshots to my buddy going, "Can you believe how far this is going?" And I sent him all the screenshots. And this was like the Christmas before 2020, because then when 2020 came, the same buddy was starting to do stuff on TikTok and was kind of encouraging me to go on there. And I had an account and I had the app on my phone. I just never really had been on there. So I started messing around on there. And on a whim, I made 2 episodes and uploaded it just to see if anybody else was interested in seeing these stories. I didn't do them like I do now. Like if I go back, I would almost like to go back and redo that series. But I uploaded 2, just kind of sharing the conversations, and everybody loved them. So I continued going, and I had stopped talking to that scammer. So actually during that time, I started talking to the scammer again and kind of finished the actual story. And then everyone's like, well, what's next? When's the next one? And I'm like, well, I don't even know how to go about doing this. So it's been a process of figuring out how to find another scammer and all that stuff. And I feel like I've been doing this for like 3 years. I feel like I've got this down to an art at this point. But yeah, it just, everybody just kept asking for more and asking for more. And then I get people in my DMs asking for help and help with an aunt or an uncle. And it's kind of went from being something funny and silly to also having a serious side to it as well.
Beyond your catfishing the catfish videos, you have a lot of informational content on romance scams. Can you talk to the people that are listening about romance scams as if they've never heard of it before?
So basically on any social media, dating apps, and any social media on Instagram, Facebook, you will have people that will contact you or try to talk to you that are using fake pictures and fake profiles, and they will try to spark romantic interest. And at some point they will turn and ask for money. So it's different for guys and girls, but like sorry, I don't even know where to begin. There's a wide array of romance scams and things that are prevalent. If I start from, let me start from like teenagers. Right now, Gen Z being scammed is on the rise. And I think a lot of it too, that generation is more unfamiliar with the dangerous sides of technology because they've just grown up with technology in their hands, and they're a lot more trusting, in my opinion. So what happens is they'll have some girl that will be talking to them on Snapchat or on whatever, and they will ask usually at some point for nudes, or they'll talk dirty, and then they will blackmail them with the nudes, saying, we're going to send these to your family and friends if you don't send this amount of money. And this is where we've had some teens kill themselves with these things.
One of the cases that Chad is referencing here and that he references later in the episode is the case of Jordan DeMay, who was a 17-year-old from Marquette, Michigan. And Jordan unfortunately took his own life on March 25th of 2022 after 3 men pretended to be a female online and coerced him into sending a nude photo of himself. The 3 men ended up asking Jordan for $1,000, which he did not have, so he told them that he was going to kill himself. And the men said, good, enjoy your miserable life, and he ended up committing suicide. The FBI did get involved, and they ended up figuring out the identity of the 3 men, and as of May of this year, the United States was in the process of extraditing them to the country for trial.
My advice, it's been a while, but I've talked to, I think, 4 or 5 kids that were aged, I think the youngest one was 16, up to like 20, in that age range there, where they've had this happen, and they've asked me, what do I do? And the first of all, don't give them money. Block them, cut them off all contact with them. If they don't have access to you, there's no reason for them to send your pictures to anybody on your list, because their only goal is to get money out of you. Then some of them will say like, well, I've already sent them money. Now you're in a little bit more of a pickle, because they know if they've pinched you for a little bit, they're going to keep trying to pinch you for more. And that's where then they start to get more aggressive, because if like, okay, you just want 50, I'll send you 50. And then they're like, oh, well, we want 50 more. And then they're like, well, I can't keep doing this. And then they might send the picture to some people on your list, not the whole list. And then they'll be like, do you want us to stop? Then you need to send us 50. So that's where I'm like, as soon as you possibly can, like, it's the cat's out of the bag. It might happen. Those pictures might get out there. But the sooner you cut that off, the less likely that is to happen. They'll also sometimes, if they're aggressive, if you've blocked them, they'll create new accounts and come at you from different accounts. And I've said, shut down your accounts. You can shut down the account without deleting the whole account, or deactivate the account. Do that for 2 weeks, do that for 3 weeks, and then come back, and they're probably gone by then. Like, if they don't have access to you, they're not going to keep pressing you. They're going to move on to somebody else because they want money. So that's with that younger generation, the big one that's going on. I feel like with like the Tinder generation, or you start to get into like 20s, 30s, you're getting a lot of, hey, do you want to hook up? Or do you want to meet up? Or something like that. And then they'll ask for money for gas. Like, I'm short on gas. Can you send me some money? And I don't have any data to support this, but that's probably the most often attempts I get when I'm looking. So I have to think it's working, and people are sending $50, sending, $30 on those kind of things, and they're collecting on that. As you start to get older, it's funny because guys will get a lot of like porn stars because they have access to nude pictures and whatnot. So you'll have these, you'll be able to tell it's like this woman that is so far out of your league, it's ridiculous. And then she'll slide into your DMs and be like, hey, I thought you looked interesting and wanted to chat. Like, at some point you got to be realistic, but you're dealing a lot of times with lonely people who are enjoying the attention and hopeful that somebody sees them and pays them attention. I've had family members get older too. I mean, mental capacity isn't what it once was, and they'll start to fall into those. So there's certain things that end up being triggers, but it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody in those either, because I've also talked to educated women who you would think would know better, who think they're legit. Like, these are the hardest ones for me. You have, a 39-year-old woman that legit thinks she's in a relationship with a man she's never met, that's on an oil rig or is stationed in Yemen or wherever. And they legitimately think, like, with the guys, I can find the porn star and be like, look, this is the porn star. This is her real name. You are not in a relationship with her. When I have people reach out to me and it's military, a lot of times those people know their pictures are being used. And the military, they'll just shut down social media, because sometimes people will find the real person and then try to like, hey, I'm really in love with you. And you're like, no, it's not me. So those guys, they just, unlike the porn stars who can't, because they're making a living off of their face, the military guys, they just shut it down. And then for me to find them is incredibly difficult. The one time I found, by luck, I found the guy's wife's Facebook, and they were kissing in the Facebook profile picture that I could send to the woman. I'm like, but here's the proof. But a lot of times I just have to tell women, you're going to have to take my word for it, that you are not in a relationship with this military guy overseas. Please do not send him money.
Even though we're seeing it kind of across all generations now, and Gen Z, it's rising, is there still a particular age bracket, do you know, where it happens the most?
If I had to guess, my guess would be males are being scammed more, number one. And I would say 20 to 40-year-old males are probably the ones most getting scammed, but not for the most amount of money, if that makes sense. I think they're getting hit for smaller amounts and figuring it out. I know the big bucks are coming from the older people. I don't know that as many of them are getting hit, but they're sending the big bucks. That's where you're getting scammers that are getting $10,000, $50,000, over a period of time, but it kept sending and sending. That's where like those big numbers are coming from. So when you start to see statistics, you're going to see most of the money is coming from the older generation. And I think what's funny is, like with my parents, they don't trust anything on the internet. I think with that boomer generation, you have both ends of that spectrum. You have those that don't trust anything and they're like, nope, not talking to anybody. And then those that don't know any better and they trust everything. That's just from my experience.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. My mom won't even online bank because she doesn't trust it, even with two-factor authentication. But my dad will click any link. You could send him the most sketchy looking email with 20 links and he will click every single one of them without hesitation. So
even this, like my mom is untrusting of anybody, but she'll send me emails sometimes, screenshots, and she'll be like, is this legit? And I'll look at it and be like, no, do not click that. But like one was also being a mailman. There's one that goes around, USPS says you have a package waiting. It's one of those things. It's being held up because you need to authenticate. Click this link. And she sent it to me. She says, I'm waiting for a package. Is this legit? No, do not click that. You may be waiting for a package. Lots of people are. That is not something the USPS does. So even the smart ones that don't trust anything, and she at least knows to ask me at this point, but those are things I think that are getting people too. And that's different from romance.
Can you tell me about, in your cases, countries that you see that are the most prevalent? And actually something that I learned about from your TikTok, I had no idea these existed, scammer academies.
Yes. So different scams are prevalent in different countries. I have blown up recently in this one country in particular, and they don't like me talking about them. So I usually just say country 234. Nigeria, if you ever see like on WhatsApp, before the 10-digit phone number, there will be a country code before that. And Nigeria's country code is 234. So some of them, and you can get fake numbers too, by the way, like Google Voice. Before we got on here, I was talking to a scammer too, and I just started talking to this one, and it was the same thing, and it was, sorry, I'm off on a tangent, but I'm going to finish this thought. This is how my brain works. Forgive me. Wanted to go over to the app Signal, and on Signal, it uses a phone number as well, and it was an American phone number, obviously using a fake phone number. But again, huge red flag when you go in there and you start talking to them, and immediately it's a different name at the top. Like, they're smart enough to get an American phone number, but not smart enough to have the same name attached to that account as the one I was talking to. In fact, it's a boy's name. And then she said, oh, well, it's her brother's account. And I was like, well, should I change my account name to my sister's name? And then I just got an LOL, and then they continued on with the conversation. Anyway, Nigeria and Ghana are the two big ones with romance scams. There are other places that do it. They have contacts everywhere as well, because there are people that have to funnel money for them. So they have people here, sometimes people they've reached out to and scammed. Sometimes they don't know they're helping funnel money or launder money because they're being scammed, but sometimes they do know. So anyway, those are the two ones that are super prevalent for the romance. Like, a lot of people always say, oh, India, they'll sarcastically in my TikToks, oh, it's an Indian boy. India does, the more high-tech scams, and they're doing the phone call, robocalls, and that kind of stuff. They've got their call centers over there. Philippines does a lot of the, why am I drawing a blank? Bitcoin. Sorry, Philippines does a lot of the Bitcoin stuff and those kind of scams. And the one I've never really hooked one of them. And I probably just don't have the patience, because the one I started talking to recently, and I remember why I never talk to them long, because they don't want to have a romance and they just want to like chat with you. And I don't know necessarily how to engage. And at a certain point, the conversation just dies out into nothing. I'm like, well, I just wasted all this time, and they never ask me for anything. And they just kind of like, how do I keep them going? Like, how do they know that I'm just playing with them? I don't know how they know, but somehow they know. Anyway, the scammer academies. So what I've learned is there's a couple ways they do it. The one video I shared was from Ghana, where they would have like this, what did they call it? Because they got upset when I said I called it an academy. They have a name for it.
Yeah.
HK. Was it something like that? It's HK? I don't even remember. It's initials that stand for something.
Yeah, something like that. Hustler Kingdom or something like that.
Hustlers. Yes, it was HK. Hustlers Kingdom. Yes. In that video, they have all these boys crammed into this house learning how to do it. That was in Ghana, but in Nigeria, the one guy I was talking to was saying, basically, you've got a guy that has a house, rents a house, owns a house, and he brings boys into the house and teaches them how to do it. And he takes a portion of their money that they get, but at a certain point, they've gotten enough money that they can now get their own place, and they go and get their own place, and then they take boys under their wing and teach them how to do it. So it's multiplying in this pyramid type of way, where they're continuing to teach more and more how to do it. And when I talk to other people, I had a lot of people reach out and say, we're not all like this in Nigeria. It's the loud minority that is making us look bad. I've seen when I was picked up by some news outlets in Nigeria, and I see the comments underneath those, there's a lot of people that are giving that sentiment, like that are cheering me on and saying, thank you for exposing these people. Because there are a lot of good people there, and I don't want to like trash on them, but I also don't want to be honest about where they are and the patterns of speech and how they speak and some of the things, so that we can be more educated on the scams that are happening.
Do you know, on average, at least, I think maybe you mentioned it in one of your videos, or maybe it was one of the comments, but I feel like there was talk of, from somewhere, an average amount that they can make daily. Am I making that up? I might be making that up.
I have pointed out that there are a lot of people making good money on this. I don't know that I had numbers. There were some scammers that were bragging in my comment section about how much they were making, and I maybe did a response video to one of them, is maybe what you're talking about. There are a lot of poor people in Nigeria and a lot of people struggling in Nigeria. Their economy is not very good. Their government doesn't help them out. And these scammers take advantage of that by bringing these kids in and trying to show them, well, this is the only way. So because they start these guys out young doing it and then they grow up doing it. So they're not all obviously young, but obviously some of them are getting good enough to own a house and better house and whatnot and move their way up in kind of a marketing. I've equated it to marketing before, because in marketing, you start out by doing small things. You're not making much, but it pays off later on as you've got people under you also paying you and taking a portion of that. I don't know. From what I've heard, like $50, a lot of people are like, well, what, all this for $50? From what I've heard, $50 can feed them for a month in the conversion rate. So for them, $50 is a lot of money. For us, it might not be that much money. And when you have older people, I think the highest amount that I heard personally from somebody was $50,000. I've seen stories of more than that, like on TikTok, but there was a woman who sent $50,000. I talked to her daughter and we actually helped her stop sending money, as far as I know. If $50 is a lot, $50,000 is a whole lot. I'm trying to remember the numbers that was given in that one, because I think I know what you're referencing. What he said was more than I make in a month.
Yeah. I remember it being actually a large amount of money. And I was like, whew, man, it's better than I'm doing. I was impressed. So I want to talk about the scripts, because one of my favorite moments in all of your videos, I don't remember which person it was, but they meant to copy and paste just what they wanted to send to you. And instead they sent the text above it, which was prompting them like, make him feel special, da-da-da-da-da. And I lost it at that part. Can you talk more about those scripts? Do you know if they all share scripts amongst each other, or how does that work?
I'm sure in a home they share scripts. I have been told that they have to purchase scripts and they have to purchase profiles. So they'll be able to purchase like a profile of the person, her pictures and stuff of the person as well. I don't know the truth to that. I do know that I got my hands on, and they don't call them scripts. I'm trying to think, format. They call them formats. And we are clients. We are not, victims. We're clients and they are formats. They've got, names for all this stuff. But I got my hands on a format for the blackmail scams that they do on teenage boys. There was somebody that was sharing it. Somebody tagged me, or didn't tag me. I think they shared it with me on a TikTok. And it was just pictures of it. And I screenshotted all the pictures. So I have it and I've experienced it as well. I see how they do it. So the better, when you have copy and paste, a lot of times you have younger scammers that are copying and pasting and that kind of stuff. As they get better, they know the format and they can improvise off of that. And then those are ones that are better at English too. Some of the ones that might be copying and pasting might not be as good at English. And it's obvious with some of those as well.
Yeah, there's definitely repetition and it always makes me laugh. They're always asking if you've eaten. Don't be stressed. They're telling you not to be stressed. Always calling you dear, making sure you call your parents. And so that was something that I caught on to after watching one or two in your series. And I was like, it's funny to me that they all follow like the exact same format or some kind of variation of it.
Mm-hmm.
So passing off from person to person, do you know if it's just random? Maybe one person gets sick of the dialogue if they feel like they're not getting anywhere with you. Do you know how that works and what makes them pass somebody on from person to person? And do they let the new person know? Because I think in one or two of your series, it was obvious that you were talking to a new scammer, but it seemed like they had no idea what the context was.
Most of the time, I'm surprised that they do know context. I can tell sometimes because there are some things they don't, but they might have an overall idea. And I remember in my early years, it's sad. In my early years of doing this, I remember people suggesting, that they pass you off in shifts. And I don't think that's the case. I think they will pass you off if they're not getting anywhere and they want somebody else to take over. Because I had been surprised where the second one ever, if you go all the way back to Kate, the second one ever, she was one that I called her out. I had the survey on TikTok and people, should I call her out? Should I not call her out? Because everyone is always like, oh, call him out. Well, that's not fun. And I like doing it as a last resort, but we did it and it didn't take. You know how that goes. It didn't take. And I called her out again, and it didn't take. And I called her out again. Eventually, that one petered out to nothing. Months went by, and she came back and was talking to me. And she asked me about things from the previous storyline. And we were talking about things from months ago that she somehow remembered. And that was one that was like very surprising to me at how detailed. But then she had a whole new scam for me, of course. Anyway, I think most of the time when they pass you off, it's because they feel like they've reached a wall and they think somebody else can get past that wall. So maybe somebody above, higher up, or maybe somebody higher up steps in and says, let me take a turn. I'm not entirely sure, but you can usually tell when that happens, or one account will shut down and they'll send you to it. My favorite, Christy by name. This has been a while now, but I don't know Christy by name. I would love to know what happened on their end on that one. I don't know if you know that, watch that one. It was one where I thought I was getting passed off because this one was shut down. I can't access it anymore. And they sent me to another one. And then the first one starts talking to me again. So I had 2 Google chat accounts for the same name, both claiming to be the same person. That the other one wasn't the real person. And I, for the life of me, want to know what was going on over there in Nigeria that prompted that storyline. I mean, somebody messed up.
Question out of left field, but I have to know. And there might not be any reason to it, but I have always heard of the iTunes gift cards. I've heard of the Instacart. What is with the Steam cards? That is so random to me. Like, I think one of them was like, yeah, I'm starving. I have to feed myself and my grandma. I have no food in my fridge. Please get me a Steam card. And I'm just like, what?
I have heard, as far as Steam cards, they're selling those. And I've heard they can get a higher level of return on Steam cards than they can on some of the other ones. And with receipt on some of these things, I think they can even get them for full value. So that they're always wanting the receipt too. So I'm not entirely sure on all that. But as far as Steam goes, I think they have an advantage because a lot of people don't know what the heck Steam is. You know what I mean? Like, and my youngest son, he plays games on Steam, and it was one day I made the connection. He was asking for something on one of his games, and I went through and paid, and it was like, I just bought Steam. Like what? And it just was like, that's wild to me. And so anyway, and he just had a birthday, and I bought him some Steam cards, and there is now right where you're supposed to scratch it off, where there is like, scratch the card. There is a big, huge warning on the Steam cards that these are for video games. It was hard to find too. I normally would go to Walmart. They didn't have them at Walmart over here anymore. I ended up going to Best Buy. Anyway, it became a little bit more difficult to find. So that's why, but I think it's their advantage that people don't know what it is. Like when you're talking with an old person, they don't know what Steam is. And so they'll just, okay, this can be used to get you, to get you your, and they're not even going to question it.
So typically the people that are doing this are males, but when you had the encounter with Mary Your Hole, that one went completely differently than anyone I've ever seen. Can you give a quick background on what happened with that? And do you actually think that was really the woman that you ended up seeing from start to finish, or do you think they flipped?
No, I will say I have heard there are female scammers over there. But by and large, they're male. And for the most part, when they have a female like that, it is a sibling of a scammer, a girlfriend of a scammer, a wife of a scammer that they're bringing in and using. So because they have females around them. So they'll usually bring them in, because if you want to FaceTime them or talk to them, they're usually not instantly ready. They got to get somebody if they're doing that kind of thing. So I don't think that's who I was talking to. I think that's just somebody they got.
So one of the things I learned about on your channel, you briefly mentioned it before, but the concept of mules that these scammers use in the United States. Can you speak more on that? I know you said some of them are actually actively working with the scammers. Some of them have just been blackmailed, so they're working with the people that are doing the scams.
Yeah. Some of them, I don't remember the name of it, but Jersey John did this series. It wasn't funny, but it was so interesting, where and he does it regularly. He contacted or sent out a feeler to contact the person being scammed. And he has this whole series where he talks to her, and she was laundering money for this guy in Nigeria, but she didn't know she was laundering money. She thought all of this was legit that she was doing, and she was being scammed. Now, part of the way the mule thing works is some people are in on it, obviously. So they're like, if I have this money sent to your Cash App, you can keep this amount and send me on this amount. So with her, when John was talking with her, it was the same thing. But then she never got to keep her portion because he would then be like, "Oh, I'm hungry. This was to pay for this," and then she would end up sending like all of it, and she was laundering money, being scammed, and she was never getting to keep her portion, which is different. I mean, it's still illegal, but it's different than the money mules that they're worried about cheating them. To be honest with you, and keeping more than what they should. That's why I think a lot of times they want me to be active. They want me to be right there when I'm doing it so that as soon as I send it, they can contact that person. Everybody needs to be in the right places. We need to have the money mule in their place. He knows it's coming. I send it. They want a screenshot so they can go to the money mule and they can be like, "Look, you got this amount of money. You need to send me this amount. I've got the screenshot that says that you got this amount. So I know you got that amount." So, and that's where if I do have that stuff, it's fun when I can Photoshop, "Hey, this is what I got." And then they have to then send screenshots back saying, "No, I did not get this." And they're like, it has this whole triangle feel to it. And I can visualize what's happening on that end and I get entertainment out of that.
For the people that are unfamiliar with your channel, can you go over some of the common tactics that they use when they're in the process of scamming somebody, like spoofing fake video calls or calling incessantly or liking and unliking things to get your attention?
One of the things that they will do, I don't know how to explain, but I can tell the difference between when they're just trying to get my attention and when they actually do want to talk. And I don't know that I can explain, just I can tell if it's mood of the conversation or what. I don't know that I can explain that. It's just a feeling. But when they actually do want to talk, if they do, I've had them do video chat before where most of the time they'll have it, well, the camera's not working and they might, talk. But if they are going to show you something, a lot of times they'll show you. Again, if they've got a porn star, they may have pictures of her and they may have pictures of her kind of like talking, but their talking is not necessarily going to match. Although with some of the AI technology that's out there, they are able to make some of that stuff appear more real. Like I've not encountered a scammer do that for me, but I've seen people show that there is that sophistication there. The one I just had recently, and you may have seen it, the one I just had recently, the guy, I catch a glimpse of him real quick before he turns the camera around, and he's got just a still shot on a phone of a girl, and then he's talking with that picture held up, and they're trying to be low enough that you can't see the mouth, but it's clearly a picture of a woman, and they're trying to convince me that person is talking, and I don't know how they would fool anybody with that, but they have to be I don't know. That one blows my mind, but they will do some tricks with video in that regard. Every once in a while, I'll try to catch them off guard and call them because occasionally, if they answer and their video's accidentally on, I can catch something right at the beginning. I think that's only really worked for me one time. And I saw like a weird backdrop of a wall with like a TV in the corner. The times I've gotten their face are usually an accident on their end when they've called me and they haven't switched over fast enough, or I've called them out and they think I might be a scammer and they want to draw me as a scammer out, showing them my real face. I don't know.
Something that I think has been uniform across every series that you've done is that they'll initially, if you start talking to them on Instagram, for example, they will very quickly want to transition to Google Hangout or Signal or Telegram. Can you explain why that is?
If you're talking to them on any of those social media apps, they can have their account banned much more easily. If they're scamming people and talking to multiple people, if they get reported, eventually they can lose your chat. So they want to make sure they still have access to you. I do think there are also more sophisticated scammers that will have somebody whose job it is to recruit, and they will be on those apps, and then they will send you to somebody else on a different app. And they will stay there on Instagram and Facebook using that account. I got another one. I'll send it over to that guy. And sometimes sometimes you're not clearly passed off, but you're passed off. I mean, I wouldn't know, but there are some times where I clearly have been passed off to somebody else. from one step to the other. So I think some of the more sophisticated ones do stuff like that as well.
Which was very identical to the Kim Kardashian. For those of you that haven't seen those series, I believe they contacted you and said that you've won $2.5 million. They're very rich. They want to give you this money. But one of the things that I noticed in the Princess Jenner one was that she sent you a lot of videos. I think the first two didn't specifically say Princess Jenner. They were just like, oh, we're so grateful. Thank you for the money. But there was one with a guy sitting on a couch who specifically said, thank you, Princess Jenner. You know, this money was great. And I am curious if you ever figured out how that happened. Now, was this person scammed and being blackmailed into recording that video? Do you think maybe that person was working with them or?
What I think happens is because I've had the other ones ask or send me that kind of stuff before. And they've also dropped certain lines before saying, I'm sure your video will be great too, or throw in some kind of line like that. And what I think happens is once I send the money, they would ask me as one last thing to make a video like that for them, is my hunch before they send it. And obviously they're not going to send it. But my guess is that's the next ask after they get the card. Okay, can you now thank us for the money? And I'm guessing those are all people that have been scammed and that they were talked into sending that video as part of the promise to get the money.
The last question I have for you is, do you have any advice for people on how they can protect themselves from romance scams?
Be skeptical of anybody who approaches you first. That'd be the easiest first step. Unless you're on a dating app. But on a dating app, I'd be suspicious of everybody until proven otherwise. Like if they can't video chat you, if they want you to go to WhatsApp or to Google Chat or to get you to go to someplace else like that to chat instead of, maybe on the app you're at until you're comfortable to go and into a phone number would be the next place to go. If it's somebody contacting you that normally would not contact you in real life, like somebody that that person looks like they might be a model. I am not a model. Why are they sliding into my DMs? These are the questions you need to ask yourself. If they say dear a lot, if they call you dear on the first day, you should be concerned. Have you eaten? Have you taken breakfast?
That one always gets me. They all say it and it cracks me up every time. That and make sure you call your parents. Chad, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and for reminding us all not to trust anybody that asks us for money, especially if it's in the form of a Steam gift card. If you liked what you heard today, hit that subscribe button, give the podcast a beautiful rating, almost as beautiful as you. You can find me on all social media at fthatpod, except for Instagram, which is fthat_pod. Check out the Patreon, fthatpod, for archived episodes, bonus episodes, ad-free content, early releases, a special Discord community, and a ton of other shit.